The phenomenal growth of information and communication technology sector is opening numerous commercial opportunities for African countries. While more and more Africans have access to mobile phones and internet connection, private and public actors are prioritizing the adoption of effective data protection systems. Indeed, the establishment of further development of a comprehensive data protection framework is crucial to support long-term growth of the sector and to exploit the benefit of a data-driven economy. Personal data have in fact become a significant source of economic value and an essential asset of many companies. High data protection standards both safeguard the value of this asset and reduce the barriers to a free flow of information. A comprehensive data protection legislation is therefore a crucial step in increasing the potential economic and social value of personal data and improving IT assets management process. The aim of this lecture is to introduce the key concept of data protection. The first part focuses on the nature of personal data and on the notion of data processing. The second part addresses the principles that govern the data processing operation with particular regard to the African context. After this lecture, you will be familiar with the key principles of data protection. Data protection regulation provides for a set of rules concerning the protection of natural persons when their personal data are processed. Generally speaking, personal data means any information relating to an identified or unidentifiable natural person, which is also called data subject. Data subjects are identifiable if they can be directly or indirectly identified, especially by reference to certain identifiers. These identifiers can be a name, an identification number, location data, or one or more specific factors related to the physical, physiological, mental, economic, cultural, or social identity of that natural person. There are special categories of personal data that are more sensitive. For example, information regarding ethnicity, religious or philosophical beliefs, political opinion, sexual orientation, or data concerning an individual's physical or mental health. The processing of sensitive personal data is generally prohibited, or at least subject to specific processing conditions. Processing means any operation or set of operations which is performed on personal data or on a set of personal data such as collection, recording, and structuring, whether or not by automated means. The data controller is the person responsible for how data is processed by an organization. As mentioned before, there are some key principles that form the fundamental condition which data controllers must follow during the personal data processing. Apart from some minor variation, these principles appear in different data protection regulations, at both regional and international level. A prominent role in this context is played by the Council of Europe Convention 108, which is open up to access by states outside the Council of Europe and is the main building international legal instrument in this field. Among African countries who ratify Convention 108 and who accept its principle, there are Tunisia, Senegal, Mauritius, and Cape Verde. The first and main principle concerns the lawfulness of personal data processing. According to this principle, personal data processing is considered to be lawful when it is allowed under applicable law and when there is a legitimate purpose. Processing may be unlawful, for example, when it results in unjustified discrimination or other violation of fundamental rights and freedom of data subject. In order for processing to be lawful, personal data should also be processed on the basis of a consent of data subject concerned or some other legitimate base laid down by law. According to the second principle, personal data must be processed in a fair and transparent manner. Fairness is considered as an overreaching principle that pervades all the others. In this sense, fairness means that in order to achieve their data processing goals, data controller must not process personal data in a way which disproportionately limits the exercise of the rights and freedoms of data subject. Transparency implies that any information and communication relating personal data processing must be easily accessible and easy to understand. This principle establishes an obligation for the controller to keep the data subject informed about how the data are being used. Furthermore, data subjects should be made aware of rules, safeguards, and rights related to the personal data processing. The third principle is purpose specification limitation. In line with this principle, personal data must be collected only for specific and explicit purpose, and is not allowed for further processing them in an incompatible way with those purposes. Moreover, they must be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary in relation to the purpose for which they are processed. The fourth principle is accuracy. It implies that personal data must be accurate at the point of collection and that reasonable steps must be taken to update or remove inaccurate data over the period of retention. Personal data that are inaccurate compared to the purpose for their processing must be deleted or rectified without any delay. The fifth principle is limited retention. Personal data should be stored for no longer than necessary for the established purposes. Therefore, data must be erased or anonymized when those purposes have been served. Finally, the sixth principle of security refers to the duty of data controller to adopt all appropriate security measures according to the nature of data, and in particular to prevent such data from being altered or destroyed or accessed by unauthorized third parties. Now you know more about the most significant concepts and principles regarding personal data protection. It is important to remember that compliance with these fundamental principles of personal data processing is required by almost every data protection regulation throughout the world.